The Patagonia giants, explorers recorded them in their books of their explorations of the new lands. We know that even Alexander the Great, about 330 BC, had historians and doctors and scientists recording his campaigns and what he saw in the new lands, all the way to India and China. And he saw Nephilim, what he described as the abominable races. Now, what the explorers here, Magellan and Sir Francis Drake, saw in the new lands, they wrote books of. Books telling about the giants of Patagonia. Now, Patagonia, a race of giants, Patagonian giants rumored to be living in Patagonia, described in early European accounts and indigenous myths. They were said to have exceeded at least double normal human height, with some accounts of heights being up to 12 to 15 feet and even more. Tales of these people would maintain a hold upon European conceptions of the region for some 250 years. The first of these people came from the voyage of Ferdinand Magellan and his crew, who claimed to have seen them while exploring the coastline of South America en route to the Maluku Islands in their circumnavigation of the world in the 1520s. Antonio Pigafetta, one of the expedition's few survivors and the chronicler of Magellan's expedition, wrote in his account about their encounter with natives twice as normal as a person's height. He said, "One day we suddenly saw a naked man of giant stature on the shore of the port, dancing, singing, and throwing dust on his head. The Captain General, Magellan, sent one of our crewmen to the giant so that he might perform the same actions as a sign of peace. Having done that, the man led the giant to an islet where the Captain General was waiting," Magellan that is. "When the giant was in the Captain General's and our presence, he marveled greatly and made signs with one finger raised upwards, believing that we had come from the sky. He was so tall that we reached only to his waist, and he was well proportioned." Pigafetta also recorded that Magellan had bestowed on these people the name Patagao, meaning in Italian plural. He did not further elaborate his reason for doing so. The original word probably be in Ferdinand Magellan's native Portuguese Patagao, or the Spanish of his men Patagon. Since Pigafetta's time, the assumption that this derived from pata, or foot, took hold, and Patagonia was interpreted to mean land of the big feet. However, this etymology remains questionable, since among their other things meaning the suffix "gon" is unclear. It's now understood that the etymology refers to a character in Spanish novel of the early 16th century. Nevertheless, the name Patagonia stuck, as did the notion that the local inhabitants were giants, and early maps of the New World afterwards would sometimes attach the label Regio Gigantum, region of giants, to the area. Then we had Sir Francis Drake's ship chaplain in 1579. Francis Fletcher wrote about meeting very tall Patagonians of 7 foot and 7.5 feet and taller. Kindly support my Patreon account. The daily posts are 5 videos daily, and they are totally different from what I have on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for your support and that you find all my content so interesting. You'll find the Patreon account details in the description box. And this is one of the drawings in the books that we see, how much taller they are and well proportioned. So in 1590s, William Adams, an Englishman aboard a Dutch ship rounding Tierra del Fuego, reported a violent encounter between his ship's crew and unnaturally tall natives. In 1766, a rumored leak out upon their return to the United Kingdom as the crew of the HMS Dolphin, captained by Commodore John Byron, and a lot of these images are from John Byron's books, has set a tribe of 9-foot-tall natives in Patagonia when they passed by there on their circumnavigation of the globe. However, when a newly edited revised account of the voyage came out in 1773, the Patagonians were recorded as being 6 foot 6 inches, very tall, but by no means giants. So the people encountered by Byron were in all likelihood the Tehuelches, indigenous to the region. Later writers consider the Patagonian giants to have been a hoax. or at least an exaggeration and mistelling of earlier European accounts of the region. Now, according to the books, unfortunately there are a few, no bones that can confirm these giants of the southern part of South America, but the books and other documents after the first discoveries confirm that there indeed were tall people living there. The first European to sail down the Southern American east coast was Hernando de Magallanes, or Magellan, in 1520. Spain had already started to explore the new land they had found to the west of the Atlantic Ocean. Magellan, a Portuguese, was trying to find a new route to the Spice Islands, Moluccas, in northern Indonesia. And when he reached the southern part of what is now Argentina, on an inlet he named San Julian, he encountered very tall people. Yes, the first one they saw was so tall that the seaman only reached to his waist. They later managed to capture 2 young giants, but they died later at sea. Up to 11 feet tall, Magellan was the first European to encounter Patagonian giants, but he was far from the only one. Let's remember that these people were very short. They were about 4 feet tall. I remember the first time I'd gone, I grew up in Montreal, Canada. We took a vacation. We went to Boston and we went to the Mayflower. We visited the Mayflower, and the Mayflower was so small we had to duck our heads to get into the body of it. And that Mayflower was a copy of the original, and the copy was 25% bigger than the original. You could imagine how short these people were at that time. Okay, so I guess about 4 feet and a half the most. So Magellan, the first European to encounter these giants, they saw giants up to 11 feet, more than 3 meters tall, for more than 250 years. Sailors suited to the land, that's now called Patagonia, could tell about seeing human giants. Yes, early charts sometimes added the legend Regio Gigantum, region of the giants, to the area. The European public interest really peaked after the visit to Patagonia by Vice Admiral John Byron in his ship HMS Dolphin, the book that was published in 1767, when they were back home seeming to give proof of the giant's existence, but the interest died down, especially after John Hawkinsworth's book in 1773, supposedly based on the English explorers' journals, telling that they had been exaggerating the Patagonian's height. They were perhaps 6'6", but not the tall giants. Well-respected captains. Well, there are no giants in Southern America today, so might be there never were any. John Hawksworth's book or not, it's hard to believe that so many of the first explorers told about these giants they encountered. If it was just more or less fantasies, why should they make up stories like that? The well-respected captains represented their countries, were out to explore, to find new routes to gold and spices, not to make a kind of horror movie. Take the mentioned John Byron. He was later made Commander-in-Chief of the British fleet in the West Indies, and during the American War of Independence, would that have happened if Hawksworth's book really had proven that he had been lying? A race of giants. The explorers to the tip of South America were not the only ones to find very tall giants. Francisco Pizarro of Spain was the first European to sail down the west coast of South America from Panama. In 1527, he managed by trickery, guns and his few soldiers to take the Inca capital Cusco and go on to conquer the huge Inca kingdom in what today is Peru. He did not see any giants, but some people that were very tall. The Inca kings and chiefs and their families, they seemed to be of a totally different race than the others. They were white-skinned and had European features. He also was told stories about a race of giants that once occupied the country. Peru's private gold museum has mummies of golden-clad giant kings. The head of a crowned king is twice as large as a normal head, and the golden tunic is over 8 feet tall. In 1543, Juan de Olmos, lieutenant governor of Port Viejo, Guayaquil, Ecuador, ordered excavations to be made at the place where the natives claimed giants were destroyed by fire from heaven. He apparently found bones indicating that from the knee down the giants had been as big as the full length of an ordinary fair-sized man. The legends told that they had come over the sea in giant boats of reeds. So what happened to these giants? All over the world, the stories were the same. The first explorer did find very tall, white-skinned people among the natives, and they found bones after even taller people, giants. Like in North America, where the Europeans encountered extremely tall Indian chiefs and the settlers making roads, houses, and farm fields dug up mound after mound with large bones that most often crumbled to the dust. So what happened to these giants? Well, the first Europeans to the other continents were not as Christian as they pretended to be, at least not when it came to the local heathens. They did away with them. Now, the tall people would, of course, be the first in line because it seems that they were the leaders. The newcomers were first of all after gold, spices, and land. But if the locals did not want to hear about Jesus and the tough methods could convince the survivors of what was the better religion, and in addition to guns and Bibles, Europeans also brought diseases. Thousands of natives and all over the world died of for example, measles, influenza, and smallpox because they were lacking genetic resistance. Now, bones after them, it was quite seldom that the explorer actually saw the really tall giants, the 11-footers, but they often found the bones after them. They had, according to the legends, also come from another place, so maybe it was giants that lacked resistance against local diseases at that time. Or was it, like most legends say, that the giants that came in from the sea were men? For it would be quite hard for an 11-foot giant to get a baby with a 4 or 5-foot Indian lady. The mothers-to-be would probably die even before it was time to deliver because the babies would be so huge. There is what I have found about the explorers to what became called Patagonia. 1520, Magellan, Spanish-Portuguese explorer, in San Julian, quotes, "By one day unexpected we saw a man of gigantic stature who was on the beach quite naked, who while singing and dancing threw sand on his head, gigantic stature, and he was so tall that the tallest of us only came up to his waist. Withal he was well proportioned. Another giant was seen taller and better proportioned than the others." Source, Magellan's chronicler Antonio Picafetta. 1525, Garcia Jofre de Loaiza, Spanish explorer, Patagonia coast, quotes, "Men are 13 spans tall," that's 9 feet tall. 1577, Sir Francis Drake, English admiral and privateer, Patagonian coast, quotes, "Men in height and greatness are so extraordinary that they hold no comparison with any of the sons of men this day in the world, 7.5 feet, describing the full height of the highest of them." 1579, Pedro Sarmiento de Gamboa, Spanish explorer, historian, and scientist, quotes, "Were big people giants. He also reported their great strength. It took 10 of his men to capture one of these tall natives." 1587, Sir Thomas Cavendish, English captain, Patagonian coast, quotes, "Of a gigantic race, as the measure of one of their footmarks was 18 inches long. Giants 15 or 16 spans of height. I affirm that the Port Desire I saw the footing of them by the shore side, and was about 4 foot of one of our men's in length, and I saw 2 of them that were buried newly, and one of them was 14 spans, that's 9.5 to 11 feet. 1599, Sebald de Weert, Dutch captain, Patagonian coast, quotes, "Savages whom he thought to be 10 or 11 feet tall, tore up trees by the roots that were a span in diameter with great facility." 1599, Oliver van Noort, Dutch admiral, Port Desire, quotes, "Savages of gigantic stature, gigantic people who were continually making war upon the other nations. He was told that not all Patagonian natives were gigantic, but only one tribe out of the 5 that lived there, the Tirememmen." 1614, Joris van Spilbergen, Dutch privateer, Strait of Magellan, quote, a human being of very big stature. 1615, Jacques de Meer, Dutch explorer, and William Cornelizoon Schouten, Dutch navigator, Puerto Deseado Hills, graves with skeletons of very large human beings with bones 10 to 11 feet. Their skulls, once open, could be placed on our heads as if they were helmets. 1618, Bartolomé and Gonzalo Garcia de Nodal, Spanish officers and brothers, Tierra del Fuego, quote, a race of men taller by the head than the Europeans. 1641, Dionisio de Rueda, Spanish general and governor of Chiloé, Tierra del Fuego, quotes, gigantic people, they fought with the local natives, the Caoutchouc, of a very belligerent nature. 1642, Henry Brewer, Dutch admiral, Strait of Le Maire, Tierra del Fuego, quotes, footsteps of men that measured 18 inches. 1704, Peter Harrington, captain commander from France, Strait of Magellan, quote, saw 7 of these giants in Gregory Bay on the Strait of Magellan. 1764, John Byron, English admiral, Strait of Magellan, quotes, of gigantic nature, monsters in a human shape, they examined and measured by Mr. Barron. He represents them in general as stout and well-proportioned, and assures us that none of the men were lower than 8 feet, and that some even exceeded 9, and that the women were from 7.5 feet to 8 feet. He said that Captain Byron, who was a tall man, nearly 6 feet tall, had to stand on tiptoe and stretch his arm in order to reach the top of the native's head. Byron wrote that one of his officers was astonished upon perceiving himself through 6 feet 2 inches height, becoming at once a pygmy among giants, for these people may indeed more properly be called giants than tall men. Such was their extraordinary size, that in this situation they were almost as high as the Commodore when standing. 1756, Charles de Brosses. There's so many here. Okay, we're almost finished. The coast of Port Desire is inhabited by giants 15 to 16 palms high. I have myself measured the footprint of one of them on the riverbank, which was 4 times longer than one of ours. I have also measured the corpses of 2 men recently buried by the river, which were 14 spans long. 3 of our men, who were later taken by the Spanish on the coast of Brazil, assured me that one day on the other side of the coast they had to sail out to sea because the giants started throwing great blocks of stone of astonishing size from the beach right at their boat. In Brazil, I saw one of these giants which Alonso Diaz had captured at Port St. Julian. He was just a boy, but was already 13 spans tall. These people go about naked and have long hair. The one I saw in Brazil was healthy looking and well proportioned for his height. I can say nothing about his habits, not having spent any time with him. But the Portuguese tell me that he is no better than other cannibals along the coast of La Plata. 1767, Samuel Wallace, English captain, Patagonia, quotes, one of these was 6 feet 7 inches high, several more were 6 feet 6 inches, but the stature of the greater part of them was from 5 feet 10 to 6 feet. 1831, Charles Darwin, English naturalist, Patagonia, Cape Gregory, quote, on an average, their height is about 6 feet, with some men taller and only a few shorter, and the women are also tall. Altogether, they are certainly the tallest race which we anywhere saw. This is from Darwin, The Voyage of the Beagle. So I'll leave links below for you for this from Wikipedia and sid.have.no, Giants Patagonia. Please leave your comments and thank you for your support.